Final update. My daughter told me I wasn't welcome at her house for Christmas because I would embarrass her in front of her husband's family. She said it as if she were setting a boundary with a stranger, so I took an action that changed everything. Now she. Look who's joining us, she said, her tone bright enough to cut glass. Margaret took her seat at the head of the table. We've made room, she said. Daniel will sit here. She gestured to the place beside her. Emily hesitated, her knuckles tightening around the platter's edge. That seat's for. It's for Daniel now, Margaret said with a finality that could have ended wars. I slid into the chair, setting my wrapped gift discreetly on the floor beside me. Ryan sat opposite me, his eyes steady on Emily. Dinner began in that brittle, over-polished way. Platters passed with clipped please and thank you. Utensils clinking against china. Emily tried to steer conversation towards safe territory. Arthur, didn't you say you were reading that history of? So Daniel? Margaret interrupted smoothly. Emily tells us you taught woodworking for years. I still do, I said. High school. Most of my students don't care about dovetail joints, but they know how to use their hands. That's something, Arthur chuckled. Hands-on work builds character. My father used to say. Emily cut in. Dad has stories, lots of them. She put her fork down, smiling in a way that wasn't a smile, especially about family holidays. There it was, the first dig. Not overt, but sharp enough to draw blood if you knew where to look. True, I said, matching her tone. Some of the best memories I have are from holidays, baking too many cookies, making lopsided ornaments. Remember the bird you painted when you were 8? Red with that crooked beak. Her eyes narrowed just a fraction vaguely. I still have it, I said. The sisters glanced at each other. Ryan kept eating, but his jaw tightened. Margaret sipped her wine, her eyes moving between us like she was tracking a chess game. Emily tried again, this time with a sharper edge. Of course, not every holiday was picture perfect. Some were chaotic. My friends still remember one in particular. Do they? I asked. Funny. I remember a few where you came to me in tears and I had too. That's enough, she said quickly. No need to dredge up old drama. Margaret set down her glass. Sometimes old drama is worth revisiting if it helps us understand the truth. Emily's smile thinned. Mom, Margaret, I said softly. Let's not ruin dinner. Oh, we're not ruining anything, she said. We're just clarifying. The tension built with each course. Emily kept dropping little barbs. About overblown reactions, about knowing your audience, about some people not understanding how to behave at a formal table. I responded with calm anecdotes, small pointed corrections that landed just enough to make her blink. Then, as dessert plates were cleared, Emily's mask slipped. She slammed her fork down, the sound sharp as a hammer strike. Fine, she said, her voice cutting through the room. Should we just tell them all what you really did? Every conversation at the table stopped. Every eye turned to me. The room held its breath. The only sound was the faint tick of the clock above the sideboard. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to hear the silence she'd just created. Emily leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. Tell them about the winter formal. Tell them how you screamed at me in front of half the school. How you embarrassed me so badly I couldn't show my face for months. Her voice trembled, not with sadness, but with the thrill of control. She thought she was about to bury me. I reached into my shirt pocket, feeling the familiar curve of the cufflink. The metal was warm now, as if it had been waiting for this moment. I placed it on the table in front of me. Arthur frowned. What's that? My father's cufflink, I said. It's been in my family for 60 years. Emily used to love it. She'd twist it in her fingers at Christmas dinners when she was little. Emily's face hardened. What does that have to do with? I pressed my thumb against the small groove at its base and popped it open. A thin compartment slid free, revealing a folded scrap of yellowed paper. I unfolded it slowly. This, I said, holding it up, is the note Emily gave me the night of that winter formal. Her eyes widened just for a heartbeat before she masked it. I read aloud, Dad, thank you for saving me tonight. I know I was mad, but you stopped them from making me a joke. You're my hero. I love you. The words hung in the air. Ryan's fork slipped from his hand. Margaret's gaze shifted to Emily, cold and sharp as a chisel. Arthur leaned back, his eyes narrowing. That's not how I remember it, Emily said quickly. I must have forgotten. I offered or rewritten it to make yourself the victim. Her cheeks flushed crimson. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Margaret said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. You've been telling this family a version of events that isn't true. Ryan spoke quietly, but the weight in his voice was unmistakable. Why am? Emily's eyes darted between us, looking for an escape. Because, she stopped, swallowed. Because it was easier than admitting I was the one who messed up. And if I said it was Dad's fault, nobody asked more questions. Nobody moved. Then Emily pushed her chair back so fast it scraped the floor. She stood, fists tight at her sides. I'm not doing this here. She walked out, her heels snapping against the hardwood. The sound faded as she climbed the stairs. Margaret stood too. I'll talk to her. She followed her daughter-in-law out of the room, closing the door behind them with a soft, deliberate click. The rest of us sat in the charged silence, waiting to hear what would be said upstairs, and knowing nothing would be the same when that door opened again. The house had a strange stillness, the kind that comes after a storm, but before you know if it's truly over. From upstairs came muffled voices. Margaret's steady, clipped tone, Emily's sharper and more desperate. I couldn't make out the words, just the rhythm. Accusation, counterpoint, pause, retreat. No one at the table moved. Ryan stared at his untouched dessert, fingers drumming once on the rim of the plate before going still. Arthur took a slow sip of his wine, his eyes on me over the glass. The sisters exchanged quick, tight glances like they were silently agreeing not to speak. I didn't look at any of them. My eyes stayed on the cufflink in front of me, the little compartment still open, the note folded neatly inside again. I pressed it closed with my thumb and slid it back into my pocket, feeling its reassuring weight against my chest. The stairs creaked. Margaret descended first, her heels deliberate on the wood. Emily followed a few steps behind, her face pale, lips pressed so tightly together they'd gone colorless. Margaret resumed her seat at the head of the table. She placed her hands on the polished surface and looked around the room before speaking. Emily, she said, her tone even but unyielding, has admitted she misrepresented past events to this family. She allowed certain narratives to go unchallenged because they served her. That ends tonight. Arthur's brows lifted slightly, but he said nothing. Emily's voice was small, barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. It wasn't meant for me. It was for the room, for optics, for whatever damage control she thought was still possible. Margaret's gaze stayed locked on her daughter-in-law. You owe Daniel an apology. Emily's shoulders rose and fell. She turned toward me, but didn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, she said again. I let the silence stretch until she had no choice but to look at me. For what? Her jaw tightened. For lying. For making you out to be someone you're not. It wasn't much, but it was more than I expected. I gave a single nod. Margaret leaned back, satisfied. Good. Now we will finish this dinner without any more distortions. The rest of the meal passed in a subdued quiet. Emily spoke only when necessary. The sisters kept their eyes on their plates. Arthur asked me a few polite questions about my work and Ryan listened to every word I said like he was filing it away. When the last plates were cleared, I stood. Thank you for the meal, I said to the table, then to Margaret specifically. And for the clarity. You're welcome here, Margaret said. Always. Emily flinched at the word. I walked toward the front door, my coat draped over my arm. Ryan caught up with me in the entryway. He held out the wrapped cutting board. She doesn't deserve this right now, he said quietly. But you should give it to her when you're ready. Or keep it. It's yours until she earns it. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the cufflink. And this next year you'll wear it at the head of the table. I took it, feeling its familiar weight in my palm. We'll see, I said. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, cold enough to make my eyes water. I stood on the porch for a moment, the sound of muffled voices resuming inside. The cufflink was warm in my hand. I slipped it back into my pocket, the metal resting over my heart like it belonged there. As I walked to my truck, the wreath on the door swayed slightly in the wind, its bow perfectly tied, untouched. This Christmas wasn't the one Emily had planned, but it was the first in years that told the truth, and that was a gift worth keeping. If you enjoyed this story of truth and redemption, hit that like button, subscribe for more gripping revenge tales, and drop a comment telling me what would you have done if you were Daniel. See you soon in the next.